These are the Forbidden's government files. They scrub it from the National Archives in the winter of 1994. If you are watching this, you have successfully bypassed the encrypted firewalls of the United States Department of Anomalous Spatial Planning. You need to understand that the world you walk through every day, the grocery stores, the empty highways, the quiet suburban neighborhoods, is just a thin layer of fresh paint hiding a rotting, infinite structure. The document in front of me is labeled Project Threshold. It contains 42 missing persons reports, 5 corrupted VHS tapes, and a single, terrifying warning. Do not look at the corners of your ceiling for too long when the room is completely dark, because the space between your walls isn't filled with insulation and wooden beams. It is filled with something else. The file begins with the testimony of an architect named Marcus Vance in 1982. Marcus was hired by a shell company connected to the federal government to design a massive, multi-level indoor shopping mall in the heart of Ohio. The blueprints were standard, except for one highly specific amendment added by an anonymous government official. Marcus was ordered to include a series of dead zones. These were deep, windowless concrete corridors hidden behind the service elevators and maintenance closets. They led absolutely nowhere. They had no electrical wiring, no ventilation, and no plumbing. When Marcus questioned the purpose of building hundreds of square feet of useless, empty concrete, his security clearance was instantly revoked, and he was reassigned to a different project. 2 decades later, a night shift security guard named Thomas was patrolling that exact same mall. It was 3 in the morning, the hour when the silence becomes so heavy you can hear the blood pumping in your own ears. Thomas was walking past a clothing store when he noticed a door he had never seen before. It was a heavy gray steel door, tucked away in an alcove between 2 vending machines. It had no handle, only a rusted keyhole. Thomas reached into his pocket, pulled out the master ring of keys left behind by the previous supervisor, and tried the oldest, most tarnished key on the ring. It turned with a wet, heavy click. When Thomas pushed the door open, he didn't find a broom closet. He found a hallway that stretched out so far into the darkness that his industrial flashlight couldn't find the end of it. The walls were covered in a pale, yellowish wallpaper that looked damp, though it felt bone-dry to the touch. The floor was carpeted in a cheap, repeating diamond pattern, emitting a faint, stale odor like a basement that hadn't seen sunlight in a century. But the most unsettling part was the sound, a low, continuous, omnidirectional hum. It sounded like thousands of fluorescent lights vibrating all at once, vibrating so intensely that Thomas could feel the marrow in his bones shaking. Instead of turning back, Thomas stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind him, but he didn't notice because his eyes were locked on the floor. The carpet was damp here. He shone his flashlight down and saw footprints, not shoes, but bare feet, deep, heavy impressions in the carpet, as if whoever made them was carrying something incredibly heavy. The footprints walked straight down the center of the endless hallway, perfectly spaced, never veering left or right. Thomas followed them for what felt like 20 minutes, losing all track of time. The air grew progressively colder, freezing his breath into pale clouds. Then, the hallway turned sharply to the left. When Thomas rounded the corner, his flashlight beam hit something that made his heart stop. The hallway didn't end, but the wallpaper did. It transitioned perfectly into the exact wooden paneling of his own childhood living room. He walked slower now, his boots making no sound on the carpet. He reached a section where the hallway widened into a small, square room. In the center of the room stood a single piece of furniture, a dark mahogany nightstand. Resting on top of it was an old, cream-colored rotary telephone, exactly like the one his mother used to have. Suddenly, the phone began to ring. The sound was deafeningly loud in the enclosed concrete space. It echoed down the infinite corridor, sharp and piercing. Thomas approached the nightstand, his hand trembling as he hovered over the receiver. He picked it up and pressed it to his ear. For the first 10 seconds, there was nothing but heavy, static-filled breathing. Then, a voice spoke. It wasn't the voice of a stranger. It was his own voice, sounding exactly like him, but completely devoid of emotion. Speaking in a flat, mechanical monotone, the voice said, "You forgot to check the basement before you left for work, Thomas. She is still down there." Thomas dropped the receiver. It clattered against the nightstand, dangling by its coiled cord, the mechanical voice still whispering something repetitive into the empty room. Thomas turned around and ran. He ran back the way he came, his flashlight beam dancing wildly against the yellow wallpaper. But the hallway didn't turn right where it was supposed to. It just kept going, perfectly straight, mile after mile. The hum of the fluorescent lights grew louder, changing from a low vibration to a high-pitched, metallic shriek that caused his ears to bleed. He looked down at his watch. The digital numbers were glitching, spinning rapidly through hours and minutes that didn't exist, displaying characters that weren't numbers at all, but strange, alien glyphs. According to the Forbidden's file, Thomas was never seen again in the physical world. His flashlight and security jacket were found 3 weeks later, resting neatly in the middle of a concrete pillar inside the mall's foundation. The pillar had no hollow spaces inside it. The objects were fused directly into the solid concrete, atoms interlocked with atoms, as if the building itself had swallowed them whole and solidified around them. The government document shifts focus, here to a highly classified research operation known as the Spatial Mapping Initiative. In 1989, a team of 6 scientists equipped with military-grade survival gear and deep space communication arrays entered one of these spatial anomalies through a localized tier found in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Manhattan. They were instructed to walk in a straight line for 72 hours, deploying radio relays every 500 meters to maintain a connection with the surface. The team leader was Dr. Elizabeth Vance, the daughter of the architect, who had unwittingly helped lay the theoretical groundwork for these anomalies. For the first 12 hours, the team reported nothing but psychological fatigue caused by the visual monotony of the environment. They described an endless matrix of interconnected, unfurnished rooms, all painted the same dull shade of beige, all lit by flickering, buzzing bulbs that seemed to have no visible power source. There were no windows, no doors, only open archways leading into more identical rooms. By hour 24, the team began to experience severe temporal distortion. To the scientists, it felt like they had been walking for days, but their biometric clocks insisted only a few hours had passed. Then came the change in geometry. Dr. Vance noted in her audio log that they had entered a room that violated the laws of Euclidean mathematics. They walked into a room that appeared to be roughly 20 feet wide, but when they attempted to cross to the opposite archway, it took them nearly 45 minutes of continuous walking to reach it. The space was stretching dynamically as they moved through it, expanding like a balloon inflating under high pressure. At hour 36, the radio relays began to pick up an unauthorized audio signal. It wasn't static, and it wasn't the team's communication. It was a rhythmic, scraping sound, like something massive and metallic, being dragged slowly across a rough concrete floor. The sound wasn't coming from behind them or in front of them. It was coming from above. When the team shone their powerful halogen spotlights onto the ceiling, they didn't see drywall or tiles. They saw a dark, shifting liquid layer that seemed to absorb the light entirely. And within that liquid ceiling, something was moving. Great, pale shapes, vaguely humanoid but stretched to impossible proportions, swimming through the solid matter above their heads. One of the researchers, a structural engineer named David, panicked. He broke formation and ran into an adjacent room seeking shelter beneath a structural archway. The rest of the team followed his screams, but when they entered the room, David was gone. His equipment pack was sitting in the middle of the floor, completely unblemished. When the government analysts recovered the camera weeks later, they watched the footage of David's final moments. The video shows David running into the empty beige room. He leans against the wall, breathing heavily, trying to calm his racing pulse. Suddenly, the wall behind him softens. The solid drywall becomes malleable, turning into a substance resembling thick, gray clay. Two elongated, colorless hands emerge directly from the wall, wrapping around David's chest. There is no struggle, no violence. The hands simply pull him backward, drawing his body into the solid wall. Within 3 seconds, David is completely submerged inside the drywall. The surface of the wall instantly hardens back into solid, painted plaster. The last thing visible on the footage is the outline of David's face, pressed against the inside of the wall from the reverse side, trying to scream through a barrier that had become completely solid once again. The surviving members of the research team attempted to abort the mission and retrace their steps using the radio relays they had left behind, but when they returned to the previous rooms, the relays were gone. In their place were small, neatly stacked piles of ash, still warm to the touch. The rooms had rearranged themselves. The doorways that had previously led back toward the subway tunnel now opened into entirely new sectors of the anomaly, sectors that the file refers to as the sublevels. The sublevels are described as an industrial nightmare. The damp beige wallpaper and carpet are replaced by rusted iron plating, dripping pipes that leak a thick, black oil, and massive, non-functional machinery that shakes the entire environment with a deafening, rhythmic thudding. It was here that Dr. Vance discovered the true nature of the Forbidden's files. She realized that these spaces were not random glitches in reality. They were part of an ancient, subterranean machine, a conceptual engine built beneath the earth before humanity ever evolved. The purpose of this machine was to harvest human consciousness by trapping individuals within spaces designed to exploit their deepest psychological vulnerabilities. As Dr. Vance and her remaining team wandered deeper into the industrial sublevels, they began to see manifestations of their own memories, built out of rusted iron and scrap metal. They found a perfect replica of Dr. Vance's university office, but the books on the shelves were bound in human skin, and the text inside consisted entirely of the dates and times of every car accident that would occur in the United States over the next 50 years. The audio log of Dr. Vance grows increasingly disjointed toward the end of the file. She describes encounters with entities she names the observers. These are not monsters in the traditional sense. They are tall, incredibly thin figures dressed in pristine, 1950s-style business suits, but they have no faces. Where their features should be, there is only a smooth, featureless surface of pale skin, with a single, large vertical slit running down the center of their heads. When these entities are near, all electronic equipment ceases to function, and the human mind begins to experience immediate, irreversible cognitive decline, causing the victim to lose the ability to speak, read, or recognize their own reflection. The final entry in Dr. Vance's log is a written note, found scrawled on the back of a classified schematic page. It reads, "We found the center. The machine is hungry. It builds the hallways out of our thoughts. If you think about home, it builds a twisted version of your home to lure you deeper. If you think about escaping, it builds an exit door that leads into a vertical drop into nothingness. The only way to survive is to think of absolutely nothing. You must become as empty as the rooms themselves." The department recovered the written note along with Dr. Vance's wedding ring, inside a sealed vault in an abandoned military bunker in Nevada, thousands of miles away from where the team had originally entered the subway system in New York. The vault had been welded shut from the inside, and when the recovery team cut through the heavy steel door, they found the interior completely empty, except for a message written on the wall in Dr. Vance's handwriting, using the black oil from the sublevels. The message said, "It is already inside the grid. It is watching you through the screens." The Forbidden's files conclude with a section dedicated to the current status of Project Threshold. The government has not stopped building these spaces. In fact, they have integrated them into the modern infrastructure of every major city, every large apartment complex, every sprawling distribution warehouse, every mega hospital built after the year 2000 has been designed with localized architectural anomalies built into their core. They are used as disposal sites for individuals who discover things they shouldn't, political dissidents, whistleblowers, and random citizens who happen to take the wrong turn in a parking garage at night. The file contains a list of warning signs that indicate you are approaching a threshold point in your immediate environment. First, if you are walking through a familiar building and notice that the air suddenly smells like old, wet cardboard, you have entered the outer perimeter. Second, if you notice that all background noise, the sound of traffic, the hum of distant air conditioners, the chirping of birds, completely vanishes within the span of a single step, the space around you is isolating your position. Third, if you look at your phone and see that the cellular signal is completely full, but you cannot connect to any website or make an emergency call, your device is communicating with the internal network of the machine. But the most critical warning sign involves your own perception of time. If you feel like you have been walking down a street or a corridor for only 5 minutes, but you notice that the shadows on the ground have moved as if hours have passed, you are already inside. The machine has locked onto your consciousness, and it is beginning to adjust the geometry of the exit to ensure you can never reach it. If you ever find yourself in this situation, there is only one protocol, outlined in the Forbidden's documents, that offers even a slight chance of survival. Do not run. Running increases your heart rate, and the machine feeds on the bioelectrical energy produced by human panic. The faster you run, the longer the hallways will become, stretching out infinitely to match your speed. Instead, you must stop completely. Close your eyes. Sit down on the floor, regardless of how damp or unsettling the carpet feels. Block out the omnidirectional hum of the lights. Do not think about your family, your friends, or your home, because the machine will use those memories to construct a false reality, to trap you forever. Focus entirely on the concept of absolute stillness. Become a piece of furniture. Become a part of the floor. If you can maintain this state of total mental void for long enough, the machine may register the room as empty and cycle its architecture, dropping you back into a random location in the physical world. But the file notes that even those who successfully return are never truly free. They suffer from a condition known as spatial displacement syndrome. They can no longer look at wide, open spaces without experiencing severe vertigo. They feel a constant, overwhelming compulsion to return to the yellow wallpapered hallways, and every time they close their eyes to sleep, they don't see darkness. They see the infinite, empty matrix of rooms, stretching out forever into the quiet, buzzing void, waiting for them to make a single mistake and step back through the threshold. The document ends with an addendum added just a few months ago. It states that the anomalies are expanding. They are no longer confined to physical buildings. They are beginning to manifest in digital spaces, embedded within video files, hidden behind the code of popular platforms, waiting for someone to watch long enough to allow the frequency of the fluorescent hum to sync with their brainwaves. If you are hearing this hum right now, if you feel a strange, vibrating sensation in the back of your skull as you listen to these words, it means the file has already done its work. The threshold is opening in the room right behind you. Do not look at the corners of your ceiling. It is already too late.